The conference room's temperature seemed to plummet as my father's voice echoed off the glass walls. My son, James Foster, will be taking over as CEO effective immediately. The quarterly report I'd been holding slipped from my grip, pages scattering across the polished floor like the 15 years I'd just lost. Around the mahogany table, board members shifted uncomfortably while James's smirk spread like oil across water. My throat constricted as I watched Dad avoid my eyes, studying the wood grain of the table as if it held the secrets of the universe. The PowerPoint I'd prepared, 5-year growth projections, international expansion plans, the roadmap that would triple our valuation, still glowed on the screen behind him, my name watermarked on every slide. Furthermore, Dad continued, his voice gaining strength from my silence, James has brought to my attention some concerning irregularities in Michael's recent operations. The metallic taste in my mouth intensified as James stood, producing a folder with theatrical precision. Security guards were already moving toward my chair. They'd been waiting outside, I realized. This wasn't a succession announcement. It was a carefully orchestrated removal. My name is Michael. I'm 40 and a business strategist. This is the story of how I turned corporate betrayal into the sweetest victory. James's voice dripped with fake concern as he opened his folder. I'm afraid my brother has been making unauthorized decisions, potentially compromising our company's integrity. Every accusation twisted reality. The emergency loans I'd taken to save us from bankruptcy became financial irregularities. The client relationships I'd rebuilt became inappropriate dealings. For 15 years, I'd been the ghost in the machine. While James networked at country clubs and burned through expense accounts, I'd worked 18-hour days rebuilding Dad's failing IT consulting firm. I'd transformed Foster Technologies from a company 3 months from bankruptcy into a $100 million enterprise. 500 employees depended on us. 3 international offices bore our name. But sitting in that conference room, watching my father's favoritism finally manifest in its ultimate form, I realized something James had forgotten. When you spend a decade building a company's entire infrastructure, you know exactly which supports to remove to bring it all down. Security will escort you out, Dad said, finally meeting my eyes. The coldness there told me everything. This wasn't just about succession. This was about erasing me completely. As the guards flanked my chair, I stood slowly, straightening my tie. Of course, Dad. My voice came out steadier than I'd expected. Just remember, you're betting everything on the son who's never read a financial report. James laughed. I don't need to read them. I have people for that. Not anymore, you don't. I pulled out my phone and sent a single text to Sarah, my executive assistant who'd been with me for 8 years, weathering every crisis together. 3 words. Execute Plan B. The guards escorted me through the halls I'd walked for 15 years, past the offices of people I'd hired, trained, mentored. Some watched with pity, others with confusion. None of them knew that in exactly 72 hours, they'd all received job offers from a company that didn't exist yet, Foster Innovation Labs, wholly owned by me, funded by the personal investments I'd made using my salary and bonuses over the years, now worth $12 million. You see, during those desperate months when Foster Technologies teetered on bankruptcy's edge, I hadn't just saved the company, I'd restructured it. While Dad and James focused on the flagship corporation, I'd quietly created a subsidiary that held all our intellectual property, every patent, every piece of proprietary software. The contracts were buried in thousands of pages of corporate documentation, signed by Dad himself during the chaos of near collapse. Our lawyers had reviewed it all last month when I'd quietly triggered an audit under the pretense of year-end compliance. Everything was ironclad. I'd also done something else. Every client relationship, every major account, they weren't loyal to Foster Technologies. They were loyal to the guy who answered their calls at midnight, who personally flew out to solve their crises, who remembered their kids' names and their golf handicaps. I'd kept meticulous records of every personal cell number, every direct email, all stored in my private contact database. They were loyal to me. As I reached my car in the parking garage, my phone buzzed. Sarah. Plan B initiated. IT department is in. Legal is asking questions. I sat in my BMW, purchased with my own money, not company funds like James's Ferrari, and pulled out a second phone, the one connected to the security system I'd personally installed 5 years ago, the one with admin access that IT never knew existed. I drove home through empty streets, my mind already mapping the next 72 hours from my home office, where I'd built a parallel operations center over the past 3 years. The feed showed James in Dad's office, both of them toasting with 50-year-old scotch. "Finally got rid of the dead weight," James said, clinking his glass against Dad's. "He never understood how business really works," Dad replied. "All those spreadsheets and projections, that's not leadership. Leadership is about presence. Charisma." I saved the video. Evidence for later, though I had plenty already. 3 years of James's illegal deals, insider trading, embezzlement, all discovered when I'd noticed unusual transactions and hired a private forensic accountant 6 months ago. Files that would interest the SEC, the FBI, maybe even the IRS. But that was for Monday. First, I had a company to dismantle. That weekend, while James celebrated at exclusive clubs, posting photos with bottles of champagne that cost more than most people's monthly salary, I worked 72 hours of systematic precision. First, the talent exodus. Every key developer, every essential engineer, every competent manager, they all received offers from Foster Innovation Labs through Sarah and my core team of 5 department heads who'd been planning this contingency with me for 6 months. Better salary, better benefits, and most importantly, leadership that actually understood the business. By Sunday night, 90% had accepted. Second, the clients. 27 phone calls to CEOs using the personal numbers I'd collected over years of relationship building. "Foster Technologies is under new management," I explained. "James Foster. You might remember him from that conference where he got drunk and insulted your wife." The contracts started moving within hours. Third, the intellectual property transfer. All perfectly legal, all documented in contracts Dad had signed without reading. Every patent, every line of code, every innovative solution we'd developed, it all belonged to the subsidiary, which belonged to me. As dawn broke on Monday morning, a thunderstorm rattled the windows of Foster Technologies headquarters. I sat in my newly established Foster Innovation Labs office, a space I'd been secretly leasing and preparing for the past 2 months, watching through security feeds as James strutted into his new CEO office at 9 a.m. in 15 minutes, his usual arrival time according to 3 years of security logs. He pressed the power button on his computer. Instead of Windows, a video began playing, security footage from 3 years ago. James, in this very office, handing a USB drive to our biggest competitor's CTO. "My idiot brother's entire development roadmap," his recorded voice said clearly. "Just make sure the payment goes to my Cayman account." James frantically jabbed at the power button, but the video kept playing on every screen in the office. His phone started ringing. The SEC. According to my contacts, they'd received an anonymous package over the weekend, delivered through my lawyer to maintain legal protection. Very comprehensive, very damning. Sarah walked into his office carrying a resignation letter from the entire development team. "Effective immediately," she said, placing it on his desk. "Also, there are some federal agents here to see you." The panic on James's face was almost pitiful. He tried calling Dad, but Dad was dealing with his own crisis. The board had called an emergency meeting after receiving documentation of James's crimes through certified mail, crimes Dad had helped cover up. Within an hour, Foster Technologies' stock price began its freefall. A company without products, without talent, without clients, just an empty shell with a criminal CEO. By noon, federal agents were escorting James out in handcuffs, the same path I'd walked 3 days earlier, but with a very different destination. The news hit every business publication within minutes. Foster Technologies' CEO arrested in massive fraud scandal. That afternoon, from my office at Foster Innovation Labs overlooking the city, I made one phone call to Dad. "Michael?" His voice sounded broken, aged. "Hi, Dad. How's retirement looking?" Silence. Then, "The stock. It's worthless. Everything I built." "Everything I built," I corrected. "You just owned it. There's a difference." "Your mother, we could lose the house." I let that hang for a moment. The house where James's achievements covered every wall while mine were relegated to a drawer. The house where Dad held court, telling anyone who'd listen that James had the real business instincts. Come to my office tomorrow, Foster Innovation Labs, 1420 Innovation Drive, 10 a.m. Michael, please. I hung up. They arrived the next morning like defendants approaching the bench. Mom had been crying. Her makeup couldn't quite hide the puffiness. Dad looked like he'd aged a decade in a week. I made them wait 20 minutes. The same amount of time Dad had made me wait outside his office the day he promoted James over me, despite my superior qualifications. When I finally called them in, they sat in the visitor chairs, uncomfortable ones, deliberately chosen, the kind Dad used to make employees sit in when he wanted to establish dominance. Your son is facing serious legal consequences, I began. Your company is worthless. Your retirement fund is gone. Dad's hands shook. You planned this. For 3 years, I confirmed, ever since I realized you'd never see me as anything more than the spare son, the backup plan. We're family. No, family supports each other. Family recognizes achievement. Family doesn't fire you in front of the entire board because the golden child wants your job. Mom reached for my hand. I pulled it back. However, I continued, pulling out a folder, I'm prepared to buy your Foster Technologies shares at their original price. Their eyes widened with desperate hope. There are conditions. First, you sign an NDA about James's activities. Second, you retire to Florida and never contact me again. Third, the money goes into a trust I control, monthly allowance only. You're treating us like children, Dad protested. I'm treating you like you treated me, as people who can't be trusted with important decisions. They signed. What choice did they have? As security escorted them out, my security in my building, Dad turned back. I was wrong about you, son. No, I replied. You were wrong about everything else. Mom paused at the door, tears in her eyes. I should have stood up for you. It was the only acknowledgement she'd ever given, and the last words we'd exchange. Time has a way of validating patience. 5 years have passed since that stormy Monday morning. Foster Innovation Labs is now worth $2 billion. The old Foster Technologies building stands empty, a monument to misplaced faith in the wrong son. James served 3 years in minimum security and now tends bar in Vegas, sending me birthday cards I never open. Mom and Dad live in a modest house in Florida, their lifestyle comfortable but controlled, funded by the son they never believed in. Mom sends Christmas cards through my lawyer. I've never responded. Sarah, now my chief operating officer with a 7-figure salary and substantial equity, still keeps my calendar as meticulously as she once planned our revolution. The 5 department heads who risked everything to follow me are all millionaires now. Last week, Harvard Business School invited me to speak about family businesses. The topic, when loyalty becomes liability. I accepted. Because here's what I learned. The best revenge isn't destroying your enemies. It's building something so magnificent that they have to watch your success from the ruins of their choices. It's knowing that every morning they wake up to the consequences of underestimating you. And when people ask how the overlooked son managed such a complete victory, I tell them the truth. While everyone else was playing checkers, I was playing chess. But more importantly, I was playing on a board I had built, with pieces I had carved, following rules I had written. In business, as in life, the person who builds the game usually wins it. Before you go, here's a quick bonus for sticking around. If you love learning and growing like I do, you need to try audiobooks. I've got an exclusive deal with Audible. Your first month is completely free. That's access to over 500,000 titles. 0 cost to you. All the details are waiting in the description. Don't miss this one.